In a book I've been reading called Accidental Saints, Nadia Bolz-Weber describes going to a youth ministry conference in New Orleans. And she says before she goes that she does not have a heart for teenagers, and she's not looking forward to this trip at all. The people in the Evangelical Lutheran Church who think she would be good believe that she looks cool. She's in her mid-40s, and she looks cool because on her bare arms she has tattoos, right? And these tattoos are reflective of things that happened to her before she became a Christian and then after she became a Christian, right? And these tattoos, they kind of tell stories about her life. So in a chapter called The Whale Spit in the Superdome, she describes getting on the plane to New Orleans, and a little teenage girl comes aboard. She shuffled into the window seat next to me and pulled out a worn backpack from which she grabbed an anime comic and her sketch pad. Shyly and without making eye contact, she snuck a look at my bare arms and said, "Nice tattoos." "Oh, thanks, I like them," which is good since you know I'll have them for a while. And we sat in silence again as the rest of the plane filled. "So what are you drawing?" I asked her. And she described some Japanese fantasy figure that she was drawing. And then the teenage girl, again peeking at the tattoos, said, "Did those hurt?" I want to talk to you today about doodling, right? Doodling, it seems to me, is a deliberate act. It's not necessarily a distraction. It's not necessarily an indication that you're not paying attention. To defund, to derail, and to diffuse all kinds of feelings and all kinds of righteous rage, doodling may be the way to go. And what do I mean by doodling? I don't just mean literally kind of writing or drawing or sketching, similar to those images that I have on that sketch pad in the back there. I mean allowing your heart and mind to engage, right, with your life story, your particular life story, and offer it to God. When I think about my experience, I don't think of it rationally or logically. Cheryl is constantly teasing me because in my sock drawer, I have brown socks and blue socks and patterned socks and white socks and black socks. And after I wash them and dry them and put them back in my drawer, I have no system, right? And so when it's dark, I'm matching a brown one with a black one, and and Cheryl keeps saying to me, "I don't understand your system." I say, "Aha," right? But you think I do have a system, right? In other words, I'm constantly doodling, right? I'm not really making sense of my experience. I'm just kind of expressing it, right? And reflecting it. And that may drive Cheryl and other people crazy. But listen to what Mark Scandrett in his book Soul Graffiti says. And he's talking about graffiti that he sees in the inner city. No matter our aesthetics, there is something in the motivation of the graffiti artist that we can identify with. A guttural yelp to be heard and understood, to talk back to the universe or to God when we feel helpless, abandoned, overwhelmed. It may be the impulse we feel to find our place of significance in the wider world and to initiate a conversation with our Maker. When I'm involved in a conversation, as I am with you now, I don't always know where it's going to go. Sometimes after the fact I can detect a pattern, right? And I wonder sometimes in our conversations with God if we're not so, systematic and logical as to miss the point of the conversation. The Pharisees and the scribes in today's passage have a very systematic, legal, rational understanding of the way things should work, right? Here's a woman, and we're going to take their word for it at this point, who's caught in the very act of adultery. Wow. What a significant moment. What do they do with it? Well, instead of engaging in the discussion about sexuality and the mystery of sexuality, they revert back to the law, right? And they bring her in front of a group of people and they endeavor to shame her, right? And to use her as some kind of object lesson. And Jesus, instead of taking them up on their question about the law, bends down and drawls in the ground. Very interesting. He doodles in the dirt. He doodles in the dirt. And on that day, fresh from his night of solitude on the Mount of Olives, he finds himself, I think, probably in a placid mood. He's pulled back from the political arguments and the clever banter of those who want to appear right. Unlike other times at the temple, when Jesus does engage in heated debates, the debate of the centrality of the temple, for example, in this passage, right, he's depicted as a doodler. He's either writing or drawing on the ground, and the content remains a mystery. It's frustrating. It's frustrating for those of us who want to know. And maybe that's the point of the passage. Far, far, far too many people purport to know what's right and what's wrong, and are quick to draw out their conclusions and make pronouncements to that effect. Teacher, Hillary Clinton was caught in the very act. Teacher, Donald Trump was caught in the very act. Jared Kushner, caught. The newly elected congressman in Montana, caught on the eve of the election. Kim Kardashian, caught. Martha Stewart, caught. The man on death row in Arkansas, caught. And you see, none of this is to say that there aren't reasons, right, to hold people accountable. That's not what I'm saying. But it's the energy that we devote to publicly shaming people. It's the energy and the imagination we give to declaring right and wrong. For Jesus, it seems like there is far, far too much time and effort that is expended in the process of positioning ourselves over and against the sinners and the infidels, and yes, the losers. And there is not enough doodling. I'm saying you've already done plenty of things to regret. In the film, The Big Kahuna, there's a businessman named Phil Cooper who says this to Bob, who is a Southern Baptist colleague in the conversation at this business conference in Wichita. Bob, you see, is a churchgoer who has been quick to indict other businessmen for looking at women with lust in their hearts, right? Most of the businessmen there say, we're just admiring the scenery, right? But Bob is on his high horse, and he's eager to condemn. And he's in a conversation with Phil, And he says to him that he doesn't think he has anything to regret in his life. This is a man in his late 30s. And Phil pulls him aside and says this: I'm saying you already have done plenty of things to regret. You just don't know what they are. It's when you discover them, when you see the folly in something you've done, and you wish you had it to do over, but you know you can't because it's too late. So you pick up that thing and you carry it with you. And to remind you that life goes on, the world will spin without you. You really don't matter in the end. Then you will gain character, because honesty will reach from inside and tattoo itself across your face. Now, two things here, really interesting. First, the first one I agree with. The second one I don't agree with. Notice tattoo that's used as a verb, right? Honesty will reach from inside and tattoo itself on your face. Have you ever heard the expression, life will give you the face you deserve eventually? I believe that, right? There's something about the visual, right, that we cannot avoid, right? Something that makes us think about the inner life. But the second thing that I don't necessarily agree with is this question of you don't really matter in the end. I think we do matter. There's humility in that remark. We don't really matter in the end. But I have to wonder about Jesus. I have to wonder about Jesus and that woman caught up in adultery, and why he takes the time to doodle in the ground. She matters. Even if it's true, she was caught in the act of adultery, she matters. And he's not willing to use her just as an object lesson. And two things happen, right, in this moment. When he bends down the first time and he draws in the ground, he gives the woman and the people space to think. But when he bends down the second time, he gives the woman time to think. I think this is what art, right, and just the honest expression of our spirituality does for us. Doodling, by which I mean the spiritual acknowledgement of the ambiguity and chaos in our lives, that taking it from inside and putting it outside, doodling, can change us, can transform us. It can connect us up with the possibilities we haven't yet thought of. Some of you know Anne Rice. She's a magnificent author. She became famous for writing scary books. The Queen of the Damned, Interview with a Vampire. By her own admission, Rice doodled these desperate and dark stories primarily as a coping mechanism for her mother's alcoholism, as well as a coping mechanism for the loss of her daughter to a blood disease. Just think about that, right? Books about the dead, books about vampires and blood. And these novels, of course, were packed with erotic and obsessive sexual images, combined with this morbid fascination with life after death. But she continued to doodle, and in 2005, Anne Rice wrote a book called Christ the Lord Out of Egypt, followed by another one in 2008, Christ the Lord, The Road to Canaan. in which she imagined from the first-person consciousness of Jesus, right? Those moments prior to his public ministry, right? She tried to fill in the blank, right? What was this like, right, for Jesus to come of age? And what's really interesting in the stories is that she portrays Jesus, like all human beings, as being haunted with regret. Even though he's making right decisions, he still has regret, right? Because he leaves some things behind and chooses other things. Abigail loves Yeshua. In the novel, Christ the Lord, The Road to Cana, there's a young woman, a teenage, beautiful woman, who grows up in Nazareth right alongside Yeshua, and she loves him, and he loves her. And it's not just this churchy, agape kind of love. It's erotic, hormonal love. And that's precisely how Anne Rice humanizes Jesus. There he is, this tormented Galilean teenager equipped with all the hormones and hesitations, and he dreams of his lips touching her lips, and he scribbles notes down about how if he could have anyone as a bride, it would be Abigail. But it won't be. And Abigail, coincidentally, has made her feelings known. If Yeshua won't have her, she tells him, if you won't have me as a bride, I'll give myself away to everyone as a harlot. Now, what's fascinating to me about this Anne Rice book is that it's doodling. It's imagining the possibilities and the regret. Anne Rice became a public Christian, right, during the writing of these novels. But then, because she was embarrassed by stuff with the institutional church, she said, I still believe in Jesus, right? I still believe in the saving power of God in the person of Jesus Christ, but I don't want to be associated with Christianity anymore. It's really strange, right? She wrote this. Certainly, I will never go back to being that atheist or that pessimist that I was. I live now in a world that I feel God created, and I feel I live in a world where God witnesses everything that happens. And that's a huge change from the atheist I was when I wrote the vampire novels. See, this is drawing with the finger of Jesus in the dirt. It's saying that there's something going on inside each of us that God wants to see, that God appreciates like art. Verse 7 and verse 8. Let anyone among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone. And once again he bent down and wrote on the ground. A lot of us here say that we believe. A lot of us here say sometimes we don't believe. Sometimes we doubt. What if we wrote that down in so many ways? On our faces, right? In conversation. Instead of just talking about the weather, there's nothing wrong with that. Talk about that a little bit more, right? That moment that you had where you made a decision and now you feel regret over it. Right? That sense of anxiety you feel sometimes when you learn about someone who was your friend and they died. These are interesting times to be a Christian. And I'm willing to write these ideas and feelings down with you.